Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. St. Louis has been exploring the idea of airport privatization, leasing St. Louis Lambert International Airport to a for-profit company in exchange for a big upfront cash payment. Most of the people who publicly back this idea either work for the consultants being paid to explore it or work for St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson. But Adolphus Pruitt is an exception. The president of the St. Louis City NAACP says he is not being paid by anyone pushing the deal, and he is also an extremely vocal supporter. So he's here today to talk to us about why. Adolphus Pruitt, welcome to the program.
Hey, it's glad to be here.
Now, for those of you listening, do you have a question for Adolphus Pruitt? You can give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL on air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. So, Adolphus, as I mentioned in that little intro there, this plan seems to have very few public supporters who aren't on the payroll. What has made you such a big fan of it?
So, sir, let me frame it this way. Between Del Mar, the Mississippi River, Goodfellow to the west, and let's say St. Louis Avenue to the east, there are at least 16 buildings vacant that are owned by the public schools, represent about 1 million square feet of abandoned space. There's about another 3.5 million abandoned buildings, 3.5 million square feet of abandoned buildings within that same area. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about now a little bit more than 4 million. And if you add up the square feet of all of the vacant lots in that area, it adds up to 28 million. So when we talk about millions of square feet of blight mm-hmm. in the city, and then we have people who occupy that space whom are in desperate need of a shot in the arm. And that shot in the arm is not going to come from some large government grant. It's not going to come from the taxpayers issuing bonds. It's not going to come from the general revenue. It's not going to come from anywhere unless, for some reason God drops down and send us a significant blessing. So it's not going to come from any of those spaces. The only place that can come from is where the city can generate additional revenue that is unencumbered, that it has the ability to target and address some of the most serious ills of the city. And right now, the thing that's up front and has that possibility is the potential leasing of Lambert Airport to outside management.
So certainly I think everybody would agree with you. There are some real problems in the city and a big need for cash. What makes you think, though, that a lease of the airport would end up even being applied to those problems, much less solving them?
Well, I mean, one, we wanted to make sure that, let's just say this, we got a asset that we cannot sell.
This being the airport.
An airport. We cannot borrow against and use the money in the city. Mm-hmm. It generates $200 million annually. And we get maybe $6 million of that. It is 90% currently. 90% of it is leased out to somebody else, to some third party. And 90%, at least minimum, 80% of the people who work out there work for the people who lease an airport, not for the city. And so when you look at it from that perspective, if somebody is willing to come in, invest money into the airport, and pay the city a significant dollars up front that it can use to address some of those ill wills, we should be receptive to at least hearing that offer. We should be putting every foot forward to receive that offer. It may not be a good offer. We may not be able to strike it. This may be pie in the sky. But to eliminate the possibility of receiving an offer Just doesn't make sense.
You want to be open to that. I did want to do a little fact check on that number. I know you've been saying that 90% of the airport is already leased in some way. I did run that past the airport, and they said they think the number is closer to about 32%. Because, yes, all the concessions are leased, and there are a lot of for-profit entities working on various things there. But if you look at the totality of the space, that's only about 30%.
So, and whoever told you that is absolutely wrong. And the reason why I can bring you the stack of we've looked at and reviewed, I got a stack of contracts for everybody who contracts out the airport. And let's be clear, the majority of the land or building that the airport has is occupied by the airlines. Mm-hmm. The gates represent more than 30% of terminals. The upfront part of the terminals where you take the tickets, all of that space is occupied by the airlines who are in there's a you can call it a profit share agreement, but it is a lease agreement. So for somebody to say that is absolutely wrong.
So we did have Mayor Cruzen on the show in October, and she was asked, I believe by one of our listeners, what benefit a deal would provide. Here's what she said to that.
It's not just about the money, although I will say this. We live in a city that has a lot of financial needs, and this is an opportunity for us to meet particularly some of our transportation needs that we have in this city. Or I should say it could be an opportunity for that. We don't know because we don't have any proposals yet. But we still are not, I'm not going to be for this if this doesn't get us a better airport. It has to do both things. It has to both provide good economics for the city, and it also has to get us a better airport.
So that's St. Louis Mayor Lyda Cruzen. She's not really talking about, hey, this is going to solve all these problems that we have in the city. She's talking about bettering the airport or maybe transportation. What makes you think that the city's going to earmark even a small percentage of this funds to the kind of problems that you're concerned with?
Well, I think that as an advocate and for North St. Louis and the people of North St. Louis, my least concern is making sure that the city allocate those dollars in a way that benefits those who need it the most. I'm my least concerned about that. If we want to get into a political discussion on how that's going to happen, we'd be here for an hour. I'm not worried about that. I agree with Lyda that yeah, sure, we want to get a better airport out of it. I don't have to talk about that part of it because at the end of the day, anybody who leased the airport and give that type of money up front, they have to get a return on their dollars, and the only way you're going to get a return on the dollars at Lambert as it is now is to improve it and improve it in a dramatic way. Let's talk about two quick things. Here's a good example. Enterprise Leasing is a St. Louis-based headquarter company. 70% of all of the rental cars that are rented out and from people coming on Lambert are through Enterprise Leasing. But Enterprise Leasing is not on site at the airport. No rental car company is on site at the airport. Yet we got 1,500 acres of ground that is vacant. Bringing those rental cars back on site where the folks, now you don't have to leave the airport in order to rent a car. Building a hotel at the airport and improving the services and all of those things will generate a better airport and make a better flying experience. It'll generate the additional revenue to pay for the management company and for the lease, and to the same degree, we will have a significant amount of dollars, hopefully up front. And I always go back to the Puerto Rico example, the $650 million up front, a refurbished airport. The hurricane just went through there and tore the airport up, and the private owners fixed it up. They didn't. The government of Puerto Rico didn't have to do it. The private owners did.
So you're saying that you're really interested in the development potential there, that this would be good for the city. Have you gotten assurances privately from the mayor that, yeah, this will also be used to help these people that need it?
I would say no. I haven't got any assurances privately from anybody. Don't need it. I'm confident that if and when this happens and those sort of dollars are generated, I'm confident in the Board of Aldermen that they're going to be fair and equitable, and I'm confident in the voting public, especially those in North St. Louis who could benefit from it, that they're going to come out and do what we think needs to be done and ensure that happens. So my least concern is that, and let's be clear, the city got a ton of money. If none of it went to North St. Louis, I would have a fit. But at minimum, if it improved the city, it improves everybody in the city. So we're going to benefit from the improvement that it generates, irregardless. We're just saying that some of that improvement needs to be directly targeted at some of the worst areas of the city.
Has the St. Louis City chapter of the NAACP endorsed airport privatization at this point?
Oh yeah. So if you went back and look at an article in the St. Louis American. It's got to be at least 2 years old when they first started talking about it. There's an article that features what the city's position is, and we were talking about more minority participation on the equity side. We were talking.
So your board voted in favor of this. This isn't just you.
Yeah.
What about the state chapter? Have they taken a position?
No, but that's that's my least concern.
Sure.
The state, we have a great working relationship with the state president, and I'm not worried about the state at this point in time.
A Twitter user said that you had previously indicated concern over airport worker protections around civil rights. They ask, what gives you confidence that a private operator of the airport will ensure that workers are protected against racial discrimination?
Well, that's a very good question. And here's why. So the city has entered into all of these contracts with all these different people that are supposed to protect us from those issues. And the one in particular was at Southwest. So when we raised the issue with the city of Southwest, based on the contract that they entered into with Southwest says we won't discriminate, but the city has no authority to force them to give them the data necessary to make a determination of whether discrimination is going on at all.
That's right. You had a pretty big fight there with Southwest Airlines.
Yeah,
and then they said the county doesn't have jurisdiction, even though it's in the county.
Yeah, right.
So you feel like the current situation is already hosed up.
So my point is that the city has all these contracts that do not truly protect from discrimination, nor does it give them the authority to investigate it to a degree and demand the information they need. And so, yes, we're fighting now, and we'll be fighting that whatever agreement that the city entered into with its private operator, that those protections that are not in there now will be in there. And that's my least concern, that getting that in there. I think Senator Claiborne, former Senator Claiborne from the state of Illinois, is on the working group, and if I'm not mistaken, it's his charge to make sure that language is a part of the RFP and a part of the agreement. And I have all the confidence in the world in Senator Claiborne's work.
Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Rebecca calling from University City. Hi, Rebecca. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that a couple months ago, Darlene Green was on your show, and she said that privatization was an attempt to raid the airport's reserves. Now, Rex Sinkfeld is part of the privatization group. I don't think he needs to make more money on the back of St. Louis citizens, so I suggest that we put the question to a vote. Let the citizens decide. Let's gear up our democracy and go that direction. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you for that call. Adolphus Pruitt, what do you think? Is this something that we should put to a vote?
Listen, I have no problem with a vote as long as we're voting on something. I don't want to vote that I get a right to vote. I already have a right to vote. If we want to vote, draw up a piece of legislation that says, if we do this, this is how these dollars are going to be spent. Here's how we're going to participate from an equitable standpoint. I would vote on that. But I'm not voting or not going to advocate the vote to give us the right to vote that I already have. And let me get back to this thing about Rex real quick. Rex
Sinkfeld is the man who's sort of subsidizing the exploration of this issue.
You know, you never hear anybody talk about the great work at the chess club and the international stuff. Rex does all that, so some things he do are good. I would say this. If I was in need of a transplant in order to live, and Rex Sinkfeld turned out to be a match as a donor, and if it required a public vote, I'm a dead man. Because they would say that because he's going to give me an organ, that means somehow that's going to make me support the earnings tax removal or some other crazy stuff. I don't believe in the boogeyman.
You feel like people are wrongly just against anything he wants to do.
Listen, the proof is in the pudding and in what they put in front of us. And I think it is a embarrassment to say that our board of aldermen, we don't have the ability to hire and scrutinize a deal to make sure it's in the best interest of the city, that we do it every day. We do it with Ballpark Village. We did it with Busch Stadium. We're doing it with the soccer stadium. We did it with Kiel. So with all these other deals, we have the way of doing it. And then that relates to the comptroller is a good friend of mine. I love the fact that the comptroller wants to scrutinize the deal. Because one thing I'm sure of is that when she does scrutinize the financial part of the deal, if it's a good deal, she's going to say financially it's sound.
You think she could come around on this?
She could be against it philosophically, but she's not going to lie about the numbers when the numbers in front of her. And then last is this, is that if we pay back, we owe about $800, $600 million or more on bonds now on the airport for a runway we don't use. And when we pay it back, we're going to pay $900 million back. We got another $900 million minimum in improvements that had to be done to the airport over the next 15 years. The airport don't have reserves to pay for that. So there's no reserves to raid. What's going to happen is if we don't move ahead, at some point in time, we're not going to be able to pay the bills that are due.
So we're talking to Adolphus Pruitt about his support for airport privatization. He has been a vocal supporter of exploring this idea, and he's here today explaining why. We got a tweet from Matt, and he says, it's pretty obvious that Adolphus Pruitt is being paid for shilling for airport privatization. Is he worried about the payments coming to light and suffering the same fate as Gaskin, referring to his counterpart in the St. Louis County NAACP, who took payments from Better Together and was later suspended for that. Now, you have told us that you are not being paid for your advocacy on this issue. And you want to repeat that today for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, our advocacy started way before this process started. So if we go back to the American article 2 years before then this was before the working group was in, this was before Rex was, this was before any of those that happened. So we're out there first, foremost. And second is this. If I wanted to get paid for it, I would get paid for it. And I tell you, I'm not worried about that. That's my least concern. What I want them, the people who make those comments, what I want them to ask me, I ask them two questions. One, the city issues hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds on an ongoing basis. And we have bond attorneys, financial advisors. We have all sorts of people getting paid off these bonds that the cities issue, both in the comptroller's office and the treasurer's office. The issues all the time. Nobody says, well, who are the people making money off issuing those bonds? How do they get picked? Who chose them? Now, I'm not worried about it. I have all the confidence in the world in the efficacy of a treasurer and a comptroller. I'm just saying that we pick and choose what we want to use to attack something because philosophically we're against it. And so I said to anybody is that, listen, paid or not paid, anytime any opportunity comes to bring some resources that we can target it toward the folks in North St. Louis who are suffering the most from the city, paid, unpaid, I wish I would get paid for it because I'm going to advocate for it and we're going to make it happen. And they should be advocating that these people get these resources.
Let's go back to Rex Sinquefield for a minute, because you said a lot of people are just reflexively against anything he's for, and certainly I've seen that. Has Rex Sinquefield, who's underwriting this exploration of airport privatization, has he donated to your organization?
No.
Okay.
No. In the past, no. Well, let's say this. At our Freedom Fund dinner, has he ever? No, he did for the Frankie Freeman statue.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
For one individual project.
Yeah, for that statue. Yeah, absolutely he did. It is not an issue of dollars when it comes to providing and fighting for the people who need it the most. 30% of the children in the St. Louis Public Schools on a monthly basis are homeless. Mm-hmm. They're homeless.
Marilyn on Twitter also asked a question. She said, is there an example of privatization benefiting anyone other than the owners in the short term and the long term? Is there anything you'd point to?
One, complete privatization of Puerto Rico. Same way in Puerto Rico, I think is a great example of...
You've been happy with how that's turned out.
The cash that comes out of it when it got tore up by the hurricane, who fixed it. But within the country, United States, there's no complete privatization, but there are many partial privatizations of the terminals. In New York, if you go on the East Coast, privatization, and the West Coast, LAX and New York, terminals, baggage handlers, garages, all of that stuff is happening on an ongoing basis, and they're doing it every day. P3s, public-private partnerships for infrastructure, is not new anywhere in this country nor in the world. It is not new. The transaction isn't new. It's new as relates to airports in this country, but only as relates to airports, not when it comes to bridges, toll roads, all sort of infrastructure projects. The transaction is the same. The usage may be different, but the transaction is the same.
And so you're saying, hey, we've already started to go down this road. Why not explore, see what kind of deal we can get?
And that's what I say to all the other folks, paid, unpaid, whatever you want to call it. Why not see what somebody put in front of us and then make a judgment based on what somebody's trying to offer us? Why not see? You know, it's political, and it's political.
Adolphus Pruitt of the St. Louis City NAACP, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. That's 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.